Folks, welcome back for a lesson on section 4.3, how to write the equation of a line. We're going to do this very differently than we did in section 4.2, where we just identified the slope and y-intercept on a line. And that's a great method if you have a graph in front of you and you can clearly see what the y-intercept is and count the slope, right? That's a great method to use. But the fact is that the y-intercept is not always an integer, and you need to know how to do it algebraically. So we're going to do this section over 2 days, and it's going to be really important for you to work on this first skill because tomorrow's lesson will be much more involved. Okay, so we're going to write equations in point slope form. And so you should have this handout that says 4.3 lesson day 1. So please make sure you have that. If you don't, pause this and come back to me. But you're going to first start by thinking about the formula for slope, right? So formula for slope, we know, is looking at a ratio between the change in y's over the change in x's. Right? So that is the formula for slope. We know that. We can take this equation and we can transform it, okay? So it can be transformed by using what we learned about cross multiplication, right? We can put the slope over 1 and then we can just cross multiply. So we would have y sub 2 minus y sub 1 times 1, or y sub 2 minus y sub 1 equals m times parentheses x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So if this equation is true, which of course we know it is, then this equation is just a transformed equation. And this is true for any pair of points. And so because it's true for any pair of points, we can write it in what we call the general form. And this is called the point slope form. What we do is we say for any xy pair, so we're going to replace the y sub 2 with just the variable y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So what we did was we just took these x sub 2 minus y sub 2, and we replaced it with just the variable. Okay, so this is the general point slope form. You do need to know this because this is going to help you create equations very easily by plugging in a point on the line and the slope. Okay, and so now if we know a point in the slope, we don't even need the y-intercept, we can find the equation of the line. So if we take a look at example 1, and then I'll do a couple with you. Alrighty, we're ready to go here. So in example 1, it says write an equation in point slope form for the line that passes through the point 6, 1 with a slope of -5/2. So this is already written for you, so just watch and think, okay? Now, the general form for point slope is giving you a template, a form to create the equation. So you're given an x, y point, and you're given the slope. All you're going to do is substitute it in. Y minus 1 equals the slope, -5/2, times x minus 6. And if they asked me for the equation of the line in point slope form, I would stop here. we know there are different forms. And so that might be part of a problem where you have to find the equation, but you're always going to start with point slope form. Always, always, always. Because this gives you the ability to now transform it into other forms. Okay? So this is the point slope form. And if you wanted to take this to another form, for example, which we will down the road, you would then transform it. And so add on to this example underneath the space I've provided here, add on the following, okay? If you wanted to take this and if you want to write it in let's say standard form. What would you need to do? Well, you need to know that standard form is that ax plus by equals c form, right? So you're going to have to do some distributing, and you're going to have to get rid of the fraction. So the first thing I would do is distribute this through. So I have y minus 1 equals negative 5/2 x. This is going to be a positive, right? A negative times a negative is a positive, and then that would be 30 over 2, because it's 6 over 1, right? So 30 over 2 is 15. So at this point, I really do have a choice. I can bring the x's over to the left side, because I want standard form. Or I could get rid of the fraction, which I think I'm going to do right now, just because I'd rather clear it out now. So I would multiply both sides by 2. 2y minus 2 equals, because I'm distributing, negative 5x plus 30. Now I'm almost there, right? We just need to move the x's over to the left side by adding 5x. And at the same time, I'm going to move the constants over to the right side. So I have, I don't know if you can see this because the board's kind of a little bit, I have 5x plus 2y equals 30 plus 2, which is 32. So again, 5x plus 2y equals 32. So this is your starter form. And you're going to start by creating the equation in point slope form, but then you can change it over to standard form or even slope intercept form, which some students call y equals mx plus b. I would rather you call it slope intercept because it shows that you know what's in that form. You can clearly see the slope and you can clearly see the y-intercept. Okay? So you have another example there beside to look at with a 0 slope. We're going to go on to the back side for a moment. Okay. And take a look at a couple of these because you're going to end up finishing this packet in class today as classwork. All right, so on the back side, you have a section in 1 through 9 where they just want you to write it in point slope form. Those are going to be the ones that are super quick because the only thing you need to do is substitute in the slope and the y-intercept. So in number 1, it says write the equation in point slope form. So you have a graph in number 1. And what do they tell you in that graph? All right, they have a line graphed, then they have a point labeled for 1, and they're telling you that the slope of this line is equal to 1. Great. That's all I need to now create the equation in point slope form. So you're going to write down the point slope form, which if you do your homework, you'll memorize it just by doing one night's worth of homework with this. And you're going to substitute in the point and the slope. So we have y minus, this is your xy point, your x1, y1. Y minus 1 equals m, which is 1, times x minus 4. So you have to have an x and a y in your equation, right? So you're not substituting in two xy points, just the one, okay? And you could stop here. Just stop right there because it says write the equation in point slope form, okay? Going down to number 10 and 11, now they're writing it out in words, but the words should give you information about the slope. In number 10, it says, write an equation in point slope form for a horizontal line that passes through the point for -2. Now, what do you know about a horizontal line? What is the slope of any horizontal line? Very good, slope is 0. So now you're going to take that information and you're going to write your point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you're going to substitute in the slope, which is 0, and the point. So y minus, now this is a -2, so we need to be careful with signs. It's minus a negative, so we know that's going to become a positive, equals the slope, which is 0, we had to think about that, times x minus x1, which is 4. Now at this point, I should do something here to simplify because I have x minus a negative, so that should become x plus 2 equals, the right side, 0 times anything is 0. So we should write it like this, x plus 2 equals 0. Okay. And the remaining problems in this section, I really like this because it's giving you all three forms here. And it's giving you examples of taking it from the point slope to another form, okay? So I did one earlier where you have to go from the point slope to the standard form. But let's do one where you have to go from the point slope to slope intercept form. Okay. So you're at a point now in algebra where you need to be able to understand these more complicated instructions. You need to know what the vocabulary means in order to give the correct response. Okay, so let's do one of those. Then you're gonna do some work on this packet here. All right, I'm going to choose number 5. See number 5 in the bottom center there. Okay, number 5 says write each equation in slope-intercept form. So they give you the equation in this form, which, if you've been watching the video, you know that this is point-slope form. And they want the equation in slope-intercept form. So they want you to take this down to slope-intercept, which is y equals mx plus b. Okay? So we have this equation, we need to make it look like this, right? It's not that far off. It's actually easier than taking it to standard form. So we need to get rid of the parentheses, right? So we know we do that by distributing. And now it only takes one more step. We need to get this minus 5 over to the right side, and we have it. So y equals 1/3 x plus 3. So this would be the answer because I have it in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form, it's okay to have fractions, so we don't need to do anything about clearing fractions here. We just need the y by itself equals a number times x plus a constant, which is what we have. So we've got three different forms now. We've got standard form, which we started with. We started graphing standard form with intercepts. Slope-intercept form, and now we have this new point slope form. And so we're going to have to work with these three forms over the next few lessons and then continuing on in geometry and in algebra 2. So this is a very important lesson. So please take the time to finish the packet, the classwork packet, and please take the time to do the homework sheet so you get good practice, because tomorrow's lesson is going to be a little bit harder because it's going to take a couple more steps, okay? So work really hard today in class and tonight in homework, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day, folks.